In the middle of a crowded afternoon at one of Chicago's most prestigious financial institutions, a black janitor in a faded work uniform quietly placed a $14 million check on the counter. And within minutes, the bank manager tore it in half and threw the pieces back at him in front of everyone. The lobby fell silent. Funds came out. Security was called. No one stepped forward to stop it. But everything changed when the bank chairman walked through the door, looked directly at the janitor everyone had just humiliated, and addressed him with a single unexpected word. "Sir." What happened next would expose a mistake so enormous that it would shake the bank, its employees, and everyone who witnessed that moment. Before we get into this story, if you're new here, welcome. This channel shares powerful stories that reveal what really happens when people judge too quickly. Now let's return to the moment it all began. Northbridge Capital Bank stood like a monument to wealth on the corner of Wabash Avenue, its towering glass facade reflecting the Chicago skyline, while its interior radiated quiet luxury. The floors were polished marble that gleamed under massive chandeliers, the walls lined with dark walnut panels that smelled faintly of expensive polish. At exactly 12:37 on a Thursday afternoon, the lobby hummed with the quiet rhythm of high-end banking. Men in tailored suits stood near the private service desks, discussing investment portfolios worth millions. Women carrying designer handbags waited patiently in line to deposit checks that represented deals, inheritances, and corporate bonuses. The atmosphere was calm, efficient, and unmistakably exclusive. Then the front door opened, and a man stepped inside who did not belong in that world. Or at least that's what everyone in the room assumed. Marcus Ellington was 52 years old, tall but slightly stooped from decades of physical labor, with dark skin and hands roughened by years of scrubbing floors and pushing cleaning carts through empty office buildings long after everyone else had gone home. He wore a gray janitor's uniform with the words "Cleanway Maintenance" stitched above the pocket, and his black sneakers showed the scuffed wear of someone who spent most of his life on his feet. A faint smell of industrial cleaner clung to his clothes, the kind that lingered long after the workday ended. His hair was cut short, flecked with gray, and his face carried the calm, observant expression of a man used to moving through places where people rarely noticed him. A few heads turned as he walked through the lobby, curiosity flickering briefly before most of the wealthy customers looked away again. Men like Marcus were common sights in office buildings after dark, but in the middle of the day inside a bank like this, he looked almost out of place. Still, Marcus walked forward without hesitation, his steps steady and unhurried, until he reached the long marble counter where the tellers worked behind polished glass partitions. The young teller stationed there glanced up from his computer. His name tag read Dylan Mercer, and he couldn't have been older than 24. He offered the professional smile all bank employees were trained to give customers, but the expression wavered slightly when he noticed Marcus's uniform. Dylan had grown up in a quiet suburban neighborhood and had been working at Northbridge Capital for less than 6 months. In that time, he had learned to recognize the bank's usual clientele, the wealthy investors, the executives, the families who held accounts so large that they had personal bankers assigned to them. Marcus did not resemble any of those people. Still, Dylan kept his tone polite. "Good afternoon, sir," he said carefully. "How can I help you today?" Marcus nodded once, reached into the inside pocket of his worn jacket, and removed a folded piece of paper. He placed it gently on the marble counter between them. "I'd like to deposit this into my account," he said calmly. Dylan picked up the check, absent-mindedly at first, already preparing to ask for identification. Then his eyes dropped to the number printed in bold black ink, and his breath caught in his throat. For a moment, he thought he had read it wrong. He blinked and looked again. The check was made out to Marcus Ellington. The issuing company was Harrison Global Properties, a massive real estate investment firm whose name appeared regularly in financial news. The signature at the bottom looked authentic, but the amount written across the center of the check made Dylan's hands start to tremble slightly. $14 million. $14 million. Dylan stared at the paper as though it might dissolve in his hands. Nothing about the man standing in front of him matched the number printed on that check. His mind raced through possibilities: clerical error, prank, counterfeit, but the document looked perfectly legitimate. "One moment, please," Dylan said, his voice suddenly tight. Marcus simply nodded, as though he had expected this reaction all along. Dylan turned quickly and pressed a button on the internal phone system. Ms. Hale, he whispered. Could you come to the front counter for a moment? It took less than a minute for the branch manager to arrive. Monica Hale moved across the lobby with the controlled confidence of someone who believed she understood every detail of her domain. At 39 years old, she had built a reputation inside Northbridge Capital as a sharp, decisive leader who prided herself on reading people quickly. Her navy designer suit fit perfectly, her blonde hair pulled into a sleek bun, and the pearl earrings she wore caught the chandelier light as she approached the counter. She glanced first at Dylan's uneasy expression, then at the man standing in front of him. Her eyes traveled briefly over Marcus's uniform, the worn shoes, the rough hands resting calmly on the counter. Then Dylan handed her the check. Monica's eyebrows lifted slightly. $14 million. For just a moment, she studied Marcus again, and the faintest trace of skepticism crept across her face. Sir, she said slowly, her voice polite but edged with doubt. May I ask where you obtained this check? Marcus met her gaze without flinching. It's payment from a real estate transaction, he replied. Monica's expression didn't change, but inside, she had already made up her mind. The number on the check seemed to echo through the marble lobby long after Marcus Ellington calmly said the words, real estate transaction. For a moment, Monica Hale simply stared at him as the quiet hum of the bank faded and nearby customers began to sense something unusual at the counter. $14 million wasn't a number people casually walked in with, even at Northbridge Capital, and Monica prided herself on reading people instantly, their clothes, posture, and confidence. Standing before her was a man in a worn janitor's uniform with scuffed sneakers and tired hands, and everything about her instincts told her something was wrong. She slowly turned the check over, examining the watermark, the signature, and the routing number. You said this was from a real estate transaction, she repeated, her voice slightly louder now. Yes, Marcus replied calmly. The details are on the check. Monica glanced again at the issuer, Harrison Global Properties, a legitimate firm, but that only irritated her more. And what exactly do you do for a living, Mr. Ellington? She asked. Marcus didn't hesitate. I'm a janitor. The words seemed to ripple through the lobby. A few customers nearby stopped pretending not to listen. Monica gave a thin, skeptical smile. A janitor, with a $14 million payment. Marcus simply nodded. That's correct. She extended her hand. I'll need 2 forms of identification. Marcus calmly handed over his driver's license and passport. Monica checked them carefully. Everything appeared real. The names matched the check. But she had already made up her mind. I'll need to verify the source of these funds, she announced loudly. Of course, Marcus said. You can call the issuing company. For a brief moment she considered it, but instead she picked up the phone. Security to the front counter, she said. The tension spread instantly through the lobby as the security guard approached. Ma'am, Monica said firmly, turning back to Marcus, step aside while we investigate. Marcus remained calm. You should verify the check first. Monica crossed her arms. That's not how this works. More customers were watching now, and one woman had quietly lifted her phone to record. The guard stepped closer. Is there a problem? He asked. Potential fraud, Monica replied. Marcus shook his head slightly. The check is legitimate. Just call the company. But Monica's patience snapped. I know what I'm looking at, she said sharply. And what I'm looking at is someone trying to pass a check worth more than he'll earn in his entire life. The words landed like a slap. Dylan, the teller, flinched behind a counter. Marcus studied her quietly before speaking again. I'd like to speak with your supervisor. Monica laughed coldly. You're looking at her. Then she held up the check for everyone nearby to see. This is clearly fake. Before Marcus could respond, she grabbed the paper with both hands and ripped it straight down the middle. The tearing sound echoed through the silent lobby. A few people gasped. Monica tore the halves again and dropped the pieces onto the counter, some drifting to the floor. Transaction denied, she said coldly. Now leave before I call the police. Phones were openly recording now. Marcus looked down at the torn check, bent slowly, picked up one piece, and straightened. I'm not leaving, he said calmly. Monica's jaw tightened. Then I'll call the police. Marcus met her eyes. You should. Just then, the heavy glass doors opened, and a tall silver-haired man in a perfectly tailored suit stepped inside. Employees instantly recognized him. Charles Whitmore ***, chairman of Northbridge Capital Bank. Monica quickly straightened. Mr. Whitmore. Perfect timing. We just stopped a fraud attempt. But Whitmore wasn't listening. His eyes were locked on Marcus. His face went pale. Without acknowledging Monica, he walked across the marble floor toward the counter, past the stunned guard and the scattered pieces of the $14 million check. When he reached Marcus Ellington, he stopped and spoke one quiet word that instantly drained the color from Monica Hale's face. Asterisk, asterisk, sir. Asterisk, asterisk. The single word, sir, froze the entire lobby of Northbridge Capital Bank. Monica Hale blinked, confused, as customers who had been recording lowered their phones slightly, but kept filming. Charles Whitmore, the bank's chairman, stood directly in front of Marcus Ellington, his expression suddenly serious. Dr. Ellington, Whitmore said carefully, I didn't know you were visiting the branch today. The room went silent. Monica's stomach dropped. Dr. Ellington, she whispered. Whitmore turned toward her, his voice firm. Dr. Marcus Ellington, founder of Ellington Infrastructure Group and the largest private shareholder of this bank. Gasps spread through the lobby. Monica stared at Marcus, the janitor's uniform, the worn sneakers, unable to reconcile what she was hearing. Whitmore then looked down at the torn pieces of the checks scattered across the floor. What happened here? Dylan, the teller, spoke nervously. Ms. Hale thought the check might be fraudulent. Whitmore's gaze hardened. Did you verify it? No. Did you contact the issuing company? No. Whitmore exhaled slowly. So you destroyed a $14 million check belonging to one of our major investors, without verification. Marcus calmly bent down and picked up a torn piece of the check. That's not actually the worst part, he said quietly. Whitmore looked at him. What do you mean? Marcus glanced around the lobby. The worst part is what would have happened if I really were the person she assumed I was. No one spoke. 3 years ago, Marcus continued. After my company expanded globally, I stepped away from daily operations. Everywhere I went, people treated me differently because they knew who I was. So I decided to run an experiment. He gestured to his uniform. I started working nights as a janitor. Different buildings. Different cities. I wanted to see how people treat someone they believe has no power. He looked directly at Monica. Today I got my answer. Whitmore nodded slowly. We'll address this immediately. You'll fire someone and apologize, Marcus replied calmly. But that won't fix the real problem. Whitmore frowned. The problem is a system where someone feels so certain about judging a person's worth that they don't even check the facts. Marcus placed the torn piece of check on the counter. I want a public investigation, he said. Within hours, videos recorded by customers spread across social media. Millions watched the moment the check was torn, and the moment the bank chairman addressed the janitor as Sir. Reporters soon revealed Marcus Ellington's identity, a billionaire investor and major shareholder of the bank. Public pressure grew quickly. Investigations later found troubling patterns. Customers of color were flagged for additional verification far more often than others with identical financial profiles. The bank eventually paid millions in fines, introduced new policies, and launched oversight programs to prevent discrimination. Monica Hale resigned months later after disciplinary hearings. Marcus Ellington, however, quietly disappeared from the headlines. 6 months later, he walked into a small neighborhood bank wearing the same janitor's uniform and placed a small check, just a few $100s, on the counter. The teller smiled and processed the deposit without hesitation. Anything else I can help you with today? She asked kindly. Marcus smiled back. No, he said softly. That's perfect. Because respect should never depend on how wealthy someone appears. And sometimes the people we underestimate are the ones who reveal the truth about everyone else.